On March 21st, 2013, International Day of Forest, FAO, or Food and Agriculture Organization, released a report on this. Korea Forest Research Institute recently reported that about 49.3% of forests have been disappearing. 260 million hectares of areas has been deforested so far. It is about 50 times the size of Seoul. North Korea's forest, that is about twice the size of Seoul, is even now being lost every year due to deforestation. North Korea's deforestation was started when the Soviet Union broke promises of nuclear power plant construction in 1980s. As the Soviet was collapsed in 1990s, about 1 million tons of annual oil supply was cut off. Accordingly, power supply for transportations and basic industries were severely damaged. Kim Il-sung urgently started Darakbat, or land conversion project, to clear forest accounting for 70% of North Korean lands for farming. Every year, 100 to 200 hectares of new fields opened and the same size of forest disappeared. They didn't stabilize the slopes when they opened Darakbat, or land conversion project, however, so that soil erosion increased rapidly. The earth was washed down by a bit of rain and it sank to the bottom of the river. As a result, rivers have been overflowed every rainy season. In addition to the yearly repeated droughts and crop failures, several torrential rains and massive floods devastated most of North Korea. From 1980 to year 2010, 28 times of natural disasters such as earthquakes, endemics, floods, and typhoons were occurred in North Korea. Of these, 19 times of floods destroyed most of farmlands and the amount of emergency food storage fell down 10 to 20%. One of my foreign acquaintances frequently visits North Korea. I envy because he can freely visit North Korea. One day, he told me an absurd adventure story. He rode in a train to go to Cheongjin at Pyongyang. Although he always receives specimen treatment by North Korean leaderships, at the time, he chose to ride train to see the reality of North Korea. The distance between Pyongyang and Cheongjin is about 600 kilometers. In the train, he tried to find out an arrival time, but couldn't find it. Nobody even knew anything about it. The situation was strange to him. After the train left the station, his doubt was dispelled. The speed of express train was just 30 kilometers per hour. He thought that there wasn't enough stabilized power for train. Several minutes later, when he looked out the window, he found out that the locomotive was leaving the train. It turned out that whenever the train crossed the province lines, the militaries of each province used engines of the locomotive to carry their cargo and then returned it. This was because of the energy scarcity in North Korea. The miserable scenes shocked my acquaintance. North Korea's severe energy scarcity let the leader's special pass count for nothing. He finally knew the reason why there is no arrival time. Whenever the train entered into the provinces, the engines came into the province commander's position. It was just lucky to get the engines back. He eventually could arrive in Cheongjin in 1.5 days. Far more observed situation arose when he came back. While he got problems with his flight schedule due to the delayed train, some people left from Pyongyang to help him. However, they arrived at Cheongjin in almost a half day. The reason why it took so long was that phone lines of most stations were cut off, so that they stopped by every station to check whether the train passed. Imagine that hotline between the national railway stations are not available. It was in the spring year 2011 when North energy crisis was at its height. North Korea's food production decreased continuously, and it led to an unexpected collapse of the North Korean regime in April 2020. Due to the terrible famine that had been continued for several years, North Korean people no longer obey the central power and started to find out their own ways to survive. Cultivation of provisions in anywhere in North Korea is impossible, since the social structure is completely collapsed. From now on, 50 million South Korean people are obliged to feed 25 million North Koreans who are nearly starving to death. This is an imaginary scenario for collapse of the North Korean regime from the book Climate Wars, written by Gwyn Dyer, who is an international security expert and a military geostrategist. According to his prediction, what brings North Korea's collapse is not a war, nor a coup, but famine that will occur by climate change. The author insists that climate change is not just a matter of environment, but it has a huge impact on politics, economy, and military. His argument has already been proved here and there. This is an argument saying that the reason for the Egyptian revolution of 2011 was the imbalance between supply and demand in crops occurred by climate change. The Egyptian revolution of 2011 has a nickname. It is called the Koshari Revolution. Koshari, which is steamed beans, rice, corn, and macaroni with tomato sauce, is ordinary food for Egyptians. Some argue that the revolution broke out because Egyptian people were so angry that they were not even able to have that cheap and ordinary food. Similar cases are also found in Africa and Middle East, where conflicts between countries occur when drought and starvation get serious. The argument that climate exodus will be a major reason for future conflicts is not a minority opinion by scholars like Gwyn Dyer or Neil Morissetti, the climate and energy security envoy of the UK Minister of Defense, visited South Korea recently and left meaningful words. He said, "The Korean Peninsula is not an exception of climate disaster, and South Korea should consider that the problem of North Korea's food and energy scarcity can affect South Korea's security." In March 2012, the unprecedented international conference was held at the capital city of North Korea, Pyongyang. 14 experts on restoration of ecological system from 8 Western countries were invited to discuss the solution for the environment and food security of North Korea. 4 months later, when unexpected flood damaged land and houses, the North Korean regime reported the flood damage situation to the world through the Associated Press, or AP. Several days later, on August 3rd, they announced the casualty from the flood was 75 in Pyongyang province only. This is an urgent SOS from North Korea. North Korea, who has tried to maintain their isolated regime by developing nuclear weapons, is now facing a real threat that they cannot even resolve by themselves. Past 60 years, nothing could open the door of North Korea. Any kind of persuasion or reconciliation failed to do so. What made North Korea open its door was neither weapons nor ideology, but forest that is dying.